The day that it was to occur got canceled because of the inclement weather. When the officers were back at work, they arranged again with Public Works to go out there and clean the area. The officer took it to mean that it was a clear as opposed to a clean. Went out there and met with Public Works, and the property was cleared out as opposed to cleaned up. And it's why I continue to express that I am sorry. LMPD is responsible for this to the extent that we need to operate in truly a support role and not be the decision makers on when a property is due to be cleaned or cleared. And part of the development of the policy will be explicit in ensuring that whomever they're meeting out there, either from Office of Resiliency or from Public Works, has paperwork showing what is to occur and that it has been authorized through those departments who are tasked with overseeing the sustainment of these encampments.
So initially what happens is that once we receive the complaint, then the homeless encampment coordinator actually goes through and coordinates the actual appointment schedule to have the assessment done of the complaint. They assess the location. They make a joint decision at the site is whether it needs to be a level 1, level 2, or level 3. Level 1 means minor, meaning that there's no encampment. That it's only debris and trash. If it's a level 2, that means moderate. That means we have to issue a 21-day notice. The 21-day notice is then actually initiated, but before that, we do 3 days notice to the coalition, 3 days prior notice to the coalition and the outreach groups to notify them, to let them know that the 21-day notice will be posted. And then from there, once it's posted, then we have our outreach groups. They go in and work for 3 weeks. They work on relocation and then also service. Next step is the actual level 3, which is considered to be severe. Severe means that we have to have public health and wellness involved. They have to come out and do an assessment and determination if the site is considered to be a hazard or a public health emergency. And once that determination is made, then what will happen is that we have to do immediate clearing. So that means that we then work right back to level 2. We would actually work, instead of doing a 21-day posting, we would actually notify outreach and go through those steps very quickly.
It could be a level 2 because people are there and their stuff is there. A cleaning is just us coming in there and just picking up litter. Now we have cleaned around folks' tents because we just want to at least try to keep it halfway manageable. And that's what after talking to our staff, the initial intent was just to clean the area and not necessarily clear it, because we know that the 21-day notice has to be done.
My understanding, there have been multiple complaints because there were businesses opening up there. There had been some harassment of a female employee. So my understanding was that there had been multiple complaints brought forth.
We checked our record. We checked our database. I had my homeless encampment coordinator check and verify to see if we received a complaint at Hancock and Market, and we did not.
And what I will say is all of the officers there were well-intentioned, and I'm not going to sit here. These are officers and sergeants, okay? This is the rank and file. And at the end of the day, they did what they believed they needed to do and were supposed to be doing. Again, because there had been this email exchange, there was, between Public Works and LMPD, there was the belief that something was to happen. The problem is the people doing the email exchange were not the actual 2 people that were out at the site. And the miscommunication took it from being a clean to a clear. And that's where not having a formalized process that requires documentation allowed this to happen. And we should not be expecting our rank and file who are out there just the doers to be navigating this terrain, especially given that it's just so political, quite honestly.
Yeah, on this, it was just like Chief Shields says it's supposed to be just a cleaning, and it got to when we were there, as the officer and our staff were talking, it got to be a clearing. Again, just like Chief Shields has said, we're going to get better at making sure that none of that happens again, and making sure that everybody's held accountable, and making sure that we are there to ensure that this process is done better.
Erica Shields, I know you mentioned a policy not being in place, but I'm looking at our 21-day protocol, and LMPD is mentioned, police is mentioned in this document multiple times as a part of representation on the Homeless Encampment Task Force. Could you speak to if you were aware of this protocol? Because you said there's no guidance. Could you speak to if you were aware of it or what role LMPD was supposed to have in this process?
That's a broad policy. There's an ordinance on what should occur. And at the end of the day, if we're going to minimize errors within the department, the policies have to be clear, and they've got to be direct and to the point. And we didn't have that here.
I'd love to hear from each of the agencies represented, because I think we're battling with the question of, was a policy broken, or is there a missing policy that needs to be in place to prevent this from happening? So from Public Works to Chief James, everyone that's on the call, could you speak to whether or not something was broken, and if so, what was broken, or if we're just missing something that would ensure this doesn't happen again?
We recognize in terms of the role of RCS as working and building out in terms of working with the homeless population and also being able to work on the ground, as well as being able to work with a lot of our community partners. So it's something that we've seen, we've identified where the error had taken place, and then we also have put in a mitigation strategy to that, so that won't happen again.
What we have done, we're actually in the process of really making those improvements now. We've spent this last 2 weeks meeting with all of the agencies, trying to go through each step, step by step, and really looking at it to see how we can strengthen the actual protocol.
Chief Shields, who wrote the statement that went out from LMPD after this incident occurred?
It was one of the homeless liaison outreach officers. She was the one who had been in the discussions about the actual cleaning to occur, but she was not there when the clearing took place.
And are you aware that there were some inaccuracies in this statement?
Yes.
Okay, and just for the record, LMPD defines untruthfulness in their own policies as intentionally making a false, misleading, untrue, oral or written statement, report, record, and or communication, including electronic communication. Lies in the statement, and you acknowledge that untruth, and I just wanted to have an understanding of who wrote it and what went out.
No, to be clear, if we roll back, you asked me, did I feel that there was an inaccuracy in a statement? You and I were talking about clearly two different statements, so we're going to, right there, I've not said there's an untruth.
Morrison, who I'm texting now, and said she had nothing to do with that statement, and it was very different from the original email that she sent to a number of providers. Natalie Harris from the Coalition from the Homeless, who forwarded it to me. So there seems to be a miscommunication within LMPD. Earlier, it was mentioned that businesses have complained, but nothing was actually sent to RCS in terms of actual follow through. Could someone from LMPD or maybe a different department speak to what some of these businesses and these entities near the encampment asked of LMPD when they put those complaints in?
There was a daycare and a restaurant that are due to open in March. There was an employee down there who got apparently alleged that they got slapped on their backside by one of the individuals living under the tent. So it was the property owner who had reached out to LMPD.
And just for clarification, that was never sent to RCS?
That wouldn't, correct, that was not. That I am aware of. I don't believe that it was.
Just to acknowledge, we have two officers who do homeless outreach, but you're saying there was never any formal process for them to get these cases or get these complaints. It would usually just go whichever way you all felt, whoever got that complaint or got that call.
No, I'm saying that when they would get the complaint, they would work with the homeless outreach providers, Public Works, people from Tamika Laird's office. So it was one of these processes that was working, but through email, through phone calls, but not a defined, this is your role, these are your responsibilities, and these are the limitations on your role.
The fact we need 31,000 plus units to house the people at the lowest income. And you're telling me whenever we clear a public space that's technically being controlled by private citizens who have any complaint in the world and no record of those complaints, as we just found out earlier, we move people around, we displace people, and then where do we send them? And I know you might say we might send them to a shelter. Where do we send them if we know that people are walking around with vouchers and they don't have housing? If there's no housing, we don't know how much housing we've created. So we're just moving people around, displacing them month after month, and they have nowhere to go. Or is there somewhere they go that's safe and reasonable?
Fortunate that they're relocated to another area. I mean, majority of the time we do let them know that shelter beds are available, and they have been available throughout this whole emergency. Throughout every day, there's shelter beds available. I see it through our single point of entry. They send out notification to all the actual outreach that there are shelter beds available for them to be able to come inside. But the hardship is that we don't have anywhere for these individuals to go.
Found rapid housing vouchers for people who were at Jefferson Square Park, who were in deplorable conditions, which we can all agree on, from feces being on the ground to them just living outside, which some of us can't even think about or fathom. But moving to people who are displaced, people who are unsheltered, people who are living under the expressway, all over this city, people who are living outside, we are really in a situation where we're not finding anything for them, and they're kind of hidden. But when we have people who are out in the open, we're quick to get rid of them and displace them and not have anywhere for them to go. I just want to clarify that's what was just said and what was decided.
In terms of what happens is that we have a outreach team that works with those individuals who, in the process of the 21-day clearing, they're working with those individuals who are in those camps to be able to identify housing, shelter for them. They're not just being kicked to the side. They actually are working with them to get them in one of the shelters, or even if there's a program opportunity for them, whatever in terms of the system with it.
All of these policies were broken, and all we got was a sorry from LMPD.
No, don't go there. Okay. I at no point said the statement that you were referring to was inaccurate. We were talking about two different statements, and shame on us for not talking about the same thing and clarifying that. The statement that was put out by LMPD, I asked you, what's the falsehood? What's the lie? We screwed up. There you go. I don't know what you want me to say. The whole point is we don't have an internal policy to govern these folks. And there was a good faith effort to clear the park, to clean the park. And the two people, the one from LMPD, the one from Public Works, who knew that the park, this area was only to be clean, were both off. And you got two different people that came in and they thought it was supposed to be cleared. That's a human error. It's a mistake. There wasn't ill intent. I don't know what more I can say on that. As far as what's occurred at the clinic, we've opened a file to see if it violated our internal policy, and we'll adjudicate it as quickly as we can. But if you want further comment on it, I need you to stop just yelling from the bleachers and help me get this changed. Help me with state law.
On behalf of the constituents of District 4, we do not accept your apology. Back to the chairperson.